How you at?
Oh, it's cool.
Damn!
Do you remember the first time you watched Friday? The porch jokes, the one-liners, the laughs? What most fans never figured out is that behind those laughs was anger, feuds, and heartbreak. This $3.5 million cult classic was almost a failure before it ever hit theaters. Ice Cube, one of hip-hop's hardest voices, shocked everyone by making a comedy, but behind the scenes were creative battles, personal clashes, and tragedies that changed the cast forever. From Chris Tucker's disastrous audition saved by a spaghetti dinner, to band colors on set, to a hidden Oscar winner in the background, Friday was born in chaos. So how did a small idea to show the fun side of the hood become decades of fighting and one of the most iconic comedies of all time? Let's dive into the secrets the cast of Friday finally revealed. A different kind of hood story. In the early 1990s, films about black neighborhoods in Los Angeles painted a grim picture. Movies like Boys and the Hood and Colors focused on violence, gangs, and struggle. Ice Cube himself had starred in Boys in the Hood, so he understood that reality firsthand. But he and his friend DJ Pooh felt those stories only showed one side of their world. Growing up in South Central, they remembered something else: laughter. There was humor in the neighborhood too, and moments of joy that rarely made it to the screen. They wanted to capture that side of life, and so they set out to write a movie. For Ice Cube, it was a risky move. He was known as one of rap's most uncompromising voices, first with NWA, and later through his raw, politically charged solo albums like America's Most Wanted and Death Certificate. His reputation was built on being hardcore. Even within his own circle, people questioned him when he released It Was a Good Day, wondering why a rapper so defined by toughness was suddenly celebrating a peaceful moment. The same doubts surfaced when he talked about making a comedy. Why would a serious artist and actor want to create something funny? Cube's answer was simple. He was a reality rapper, and reality wasn't always grim. Sometimes, life in the hood was fun. This film would be his chance to prove he was more than the tough persona people thought they knew. O'Shea Jackson, born in Los Angeles in 1969, came from a working-class family. His father worked as a groundskeeper at UCLA, and his mother was a hospital clerk. His stage name came from his older brother, who once teased he'd stick him in a freezer until he turned into an ice cube. He began writing raps in 9th grade after a classmate challenged him in typing class. That early spark led him to connect with Dr. Dre, and soon he was performing at parties and eventually selling his first song to Eazy-E. From there, he became the main lyricist for the groundbreaking group NWA. But money disputes pushed him to leave, and his solo career exploded, controversial, powerful, and hugely successful. His path from the streets of South Central to the top of the music industry gave him the stories, credibility, and vision he needed. Still, stepping into film wasn't just another career move. It was an entirely new challenge: the scrappy plan to get it made. In the beginning, Ice Cube and DJ Pooh had nothing more than a scrappy plan to get their film made. They looked to filmmaker Robert Townsend for inspiration. After all, he had famously financed Hollywood Shuffle with nothing but credit cards. If that's what it took, they were ready to do the same. They also studied Kevin Smith's Clerks, another indie success shot on a shoestring budget. Their idea was to pitch their own film as a small, one-location comedy with a tight cast to keep expenses low. At one point, they even considered shooting the entire thing in black and white, just like Clerks, if that meant saving money. The script they wrote was deeply personal, drawn straight from their own lives. Craig, the main character, being fired on his day off for allegedly stealing boxes, was no Hollywood invention. It was a real incident that had happened to Cube's cousin, a delivery driver. Smokey, on the other hand, came directly from DJ Pooh's past, when he used to hustle weed. Almost every face in the story was familiar to them in real life. The intimidating neighborhood bully Debo, Craig's quick-witted father, all of them were inspired by people Cube and Pooh had grown up with in South Central. For a while, it looked like they would have to scrape together the money themselves just to bring that vision to the screen. But then came a turning point. New Line Cinema got their hands on the script, and they loved it. Having already found success with comedies like House Party, the studio saw potential in Friday. They agreed to finance the project, sparing Cube from maxing out credit cards. There was just one catch. The studio had a demand that would change the movie forever and nearly stop it from getting made at all. The casting crisis. The studio's biggest concern was the character of Smokey. From the start, Ice Cube and DJ Pooh had planned for Pooh himself to play the role. After all, Smokey was based on his own life, and everyone knew he was naturally funny. But New Line Cinema wasn't convinced. They argued that Pooh didn't have enough acting experience and pushed for a bigger, more established name. Reluctantly, Pooh stepped aside and took the smaller part of Red, while Cube began searching for someone else to bring Smokey to life. They looked at popular comedians of the time, including Chris Rock and Tommy Davidson. But Cube had already spotted someone special. He'd seen a young, energetic comedian on Def Comedy Jam whose wild style stood out immediately: Chris Tucker. Tucker had moved from Atlanta to Los Angeles in 1990 to chase his dream of comedy, and he was already making waves with his high-energy, unpredictable performances. Cube saw something real in him. He had that hood authenticity that made him perfect for Smokey. But when the audition came, it was a disaster. Tucker bombed. The casting director remembered him being exhausted from touring, unprepared, and stumbling through the script. Cube's pick looked like a mistake. That's when a secret alliance saved everything. Director F. Gary Gray saw past the messy audition and recognized Tucker's spark of genius. He fought for him, convincing the studio to give Tucker another shot. Then Angela Means, who played Felicia, stepped in quietly to help. She knew Tucker was nervous and invited him to her home for dinner to go over the part. Faison Love, who played Big Worm, later recalled Tucker's frustration and fear that someone like Dave Chappelle or D.L. Hewley might swoop in and take the role. Angela worked with him until his confidence returned. She later said that by the time the spaghetti was gone, Chris Tucker was Smokey. When Tucker came back for his second audition, he lit up the room. He nailed the role, won over the studio, and transformed into the heart of Friday. A comedy legend had just been born. Secrets from the set. Once Chris Tucker joined the cast, the movie truly came alive. His chemistry with Ice Cube was instant, and their back-and-forth energy lit up the screen. What most fans never realized, though, is that many of Tucker's funniest lines weren't scripted at all. He was encouraged to improvise, and his quick wit turned Smokey into one of the most memorable comedy characters of the 90s. Even the film's most quoted line, "Bye, Felicia," was the result of improvisation. Angela Means, who played Felicia, was originally supposed to simply approach Craig and Smokey on the porch. But she decided Felicia would be the type of person who ignored boundaries. Without warning anyone, she plopped herself down right between Cube and Tucker. Tucker's irritated reaction in the scene wasn't acting. It was real. He was genuinely annoyed, and that authenticity gave the moment its magic, transforming it into a cultural catchphrase. Despite all the laughs on screen, the production itself was run with focus and discipline. With a budget of less than $3 million and only 20 days to film, there was no room for mistakes. Ice Cube, producing his first movie, made sure everything stayed on track. And although Smokey and Craig spent most of the film smoking weed, Cube insisted that neither he nor Tucker actually light up. He wanted to stay clear-headed and professional during the shoot. Friday also gave the world an early glimpse of future stars. A 13-year-old Megan Good appeared as one of the kids on the block, while a young Michael Clark Duncan showed up in a quick, uncredited flashback as a craps player long before he rose to fame in the Green Mile. The magic captured on that porch seemed unstoppable, but off-camera, tensions were beginning to rise. A quiet conflict was forming, one that would eventually split Cube and Tucker apart and change the future of the Friday franchise forever. The feud most fans never knew. Publicly, the reasons given for Chris Tucker's exit from the Friday franchise were about money and religion. But behind the scenes, there may have been something deeper, a quiet feud that most fans never realized. Faison Love, who played Big Worm, once hinted that tensions had grown between Ice Cube and Tucker after the first film. At the heart of the conflict was a question of credit. Who truly deserved recognition for the movie's success? The biggest clue came not from an interview, but from the opening of Next Friday. In one scene, a character mentions people trying to take credit for writing the original script. For many, this felt like a subtle jab aimed at Tucker. After all, while Ice Cube and DJ Pooh had crafted the script, it was Tucker's wild improvisations that gave the film so much of its humor and turned Smokey into an unforgettable character. That tension between Cube's authorship and Tucker's spontaneous genius suggested a quiet clash over creative ownership. It wasn't just about contracts or paychecks, it was about respect. And that unspoken disagreement may have been the true reason their partnership unraveled. What ended wasn't simply a business arrangement. It was the end of a friendship. And Smokey's disappearance left a hole in the franchise that could never quite be filled. Worse still, the family that Friday had created would soon be shaken by tragedies far greater than any creative feud, as one cast member after another was lost in the years that followed. The million-dollar mystery. When Next Friday hit theaters in 2000, fans were stunned. Smokey was gone. The character who had stolen the show in the original film had vanished without explanation, leaving audiences to wonder, why would Chris Tucker walk away from the role that made him a star? The answers that surfaced over the years were complicated, with different versions of the story depending on who was asked. Ice Cube claimed it came down to money and religion. According to him, the studio had offered Tucker a massive payday, somewhere between $10 and $12 million, to reprise his role. But Tucker turned it down. Cube explained that his co-star had become a devout Christian and no longer wanted to curse or smoke weed on screen, two of Smokey's defining traits. Tucker later confirmed part of this. He admitted that the weed was a major reason for his decision. Friday had become a cultural phenomenon, and he felt uncomfortable with the idea that he was encouraging audiences to embrace smoking. He also made it clear that sequels didn't interest him. Tucker preferred to give his best to a film and then move on to new challenges. In his eyes, leaving Smokey behind allowed him to grow as an actor and avoid being typecast. The late John Witherspoon, who played Craig's father, offered his own theory. He believed it was a mix of both reasons. On one hand, Tucker had indeed been influenced by preachers who warned him against roles that glamorized smoking. On the other, Witherspoon pointed out that Tucker was about to become an international superstar thanks to the Rush Hour films, where he earned $20 million a picture. Witherspoon joked that for that kind of money, he wouldn't have come back either. Red clothing banned for gang safety. When the Friday production team set up to film on 126th Street between Normandy and Halldale in south-central Los Angeles, they had no idea they were stepping into one of the city's most dangerous neighborhoods. It was the mid-1990s, at the height of gang tensions, and the location sat in the middle of Crips territory. The choice of location wasn't about notoriety, it was personal. Director F. Gary Gray had grown up there, and many of his old friends still lived on the block, offering up their homes as filming spots. But the reality quickly became clear. This wasn't just any neighborhood. It was Crip-controlled turf, where blue bandanas marked allegiance and separated them from their bitter rivals, the Bloods, who wore red. On those streets, colors weren't fashion, they were life or death. Recognizing the danger, the filmmakers made an extraordinary decision. They banned red from the production entirely. Cast and crew were warned in advance. No red clothing, no accessories, nothing that could be mistaken for blood colors, even from a distance. The rule was strict, and it reshaped the look of the entire movie. Watch Friday closely, and the influence is obvious. Smokey wears a blue shirt and cap. Debo looms in a blue plaid. Mrs. Parker struts in blue shorts. Even a young Megan Good appears in blue overalls and a hat. It wasn't a stylistic choice. It was a survival strategy. The measure worked. Despite a few tense moments with real gang members during filming, the production wrapped without serious incidents tied to gang violence. In the end, the film's heavy use of blue became an unintentional reflection of its setting, a neighborhood defined by the realities of the street, even as the story found the humor in it. Director's childhood home is crime scene. One of Friday's most unforgettable moments comes in a flashback, when the neighborhood bully Debo viciously punches Red over a stolen bicycle, sending him flying through the air. What most fans don't realize is that this brutal scene was filmed at director F. Gary Gray's actual childhood home. Gray's choice wasn't just about saving money on location fees, though the low budget certainly made filming in real neighborhoods practical. The decision was far more personal. Gray had grown up in South Central Los Angeles, the very world Friday set out to portray. When Ice Cube tapped him to direct, it wasn't because of his experience. This was Gray's first feature film, but because he understood the culture, the streets, and the people. He had lived it. The house where Debo knocks out Red was the same house where Gray spent his own formative years, long before he became known for directing music videos for stars like Ice Cube, TLC, and Dr. Dre. By 1995, Gray had built a reputation behind the camera, but Friday was his chance to prove himself as a filmmaker. That authenticity extended beyond his own home. Many of the houses that appear in the movie belonged to Gray's childhood friends, who offered them up for filming. The result was a neighborhood on screen that felt lived in and real, not a polished set on a studio backlot. By turning the streets and houses of his own past into the backdrop for the film, Gray gave Friday its unique authenticity. It wasn't just a comedy set in South Central. It was a story told by someone who had grown up there, grounding the film in the spirit and reality of the community it portrayed. Michael Clark Duncan's hidden debut. Long before Michael Clark Duncan moved audiences to tears with his Oscar-nominated role as John Coffey in The Green Mile, he quietly appeared in Friday, though most fans never even noticed. In the 1995 film, Duncan shows up uncredited during a quick craps game scene, blending so seamlessly into the background that it's easy to miss the future star among the gamblers. At the time, he was still hustling for small roles, supporting himself with side jobs while chasing his Hollywood dreams. Before acting took off, Duncan had worked as a bodyguard for celebrities like Will Smith, Martin Lawrence, and the notorious B.I.G., his massive 6 feet 5 inches frame and commanding presence making him a natural fit for the job. On the set of Friday, his contributions went beyond that brief cameo. Behind the scenes, he even served as a stand-in for Tommy "Tiny" Lister Jr., who played the fearsome neighborhood bully Debo. Duncan would fill in during rehearsals and blocking, helping the crew test camera angles and lighting before the main actors stepped in. For Duncan, it was the kind of behind-the-scenes grind that many aspiring actors go through. Quiet work that builds experience and connections while waiting for a big break. His cameos and background jobs were a far cry from what lay ahead. Just 4 years later, he would stun audiences worldwide with The Green Mile, earning an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. From there, Duncan's career skyrocketed, landing roles in Armageddon, Sin City, The Scorpion King, and Daredevil. The contrast is striking. In Friday, he was a barely noticeable extra. Within a few years, he was one of Hollywood's most recognizable talents. Sadly, Duncan's career was cut short when he died of a heart attack in 2012 at just 54 years old. But his journey from uncredited background actor to beloved movie star remains one of Hollywood's most inspiring rises. Honoring the fallen legends. Since Friday first hit theaters, the film's legacy has been marked not only by success, but also by deep loss. Over the years, several beloved cast members have passed away, leaving behind memories that fans still cherish. John Witherspoon, who brought Craig's father, Willie Jones, to life, died in 2019 at the age of 77 after a heart attack. Long before he was known as Pops, Witherspoon had been a comedy veteran, starting his stand-up career in the 1960s alongside legends like Richard Pryor and David Letterman. His sharp timing and unique delivery carried through every role, from the Wayans Bros to his unforgettable voice as Granddad on the Boondocks. Witherspoon often joked about the film's tiny budget, revealing that the main cast members earned just $5,000 each for Friday, a small price for creating characters that became cultural icons. A year later, fans mourned the loss of Tommy "Tiny" Lister Jr., the actor who embodied Debo, the neighborhood bully everyone feared. Lister died in 2020 at the age of 62 from cardiovascular disease. Before turning to acting, he had been a college shot put champion and even wrestled professionally as Zeus, famously clashing with Hulk Hogan. Born blind in one eye, Lister's distinctive look gave him an intimidating screen presence, but behind the scenes, he was known as warm and generous. Ice Cube remembered him fondly as America's favorite bully and a good dude at heart who would be deeply missed. The world had already said goodbye to Bernie Mac years earlier. In 2008, the comic powerhouse who played Pastor Clever died at just 50 years old from complications of sarcoidosis, a rare autoimmune disease. Raised on the tough streets of Chicago, Mac turned hardship into humor, inspired to pursue comedy after seeing his sick mother laugh at a Bill Cosby performance on TV. Determined to make others laugh so she wouldn't cry, he built a career that included the original Kings of Comedy tour and his hit sitcom, The Bernie Mac Show. In 2021, tragedy struck again with the death of Anthony A.J. Johnson, who had delivered laughs as the clumsy thief Easel. He passed away at 55 from multi-system organ failure after years of battling alcohol abuse. Johnson was also remembered for his role in House Party and for his stand-up work. Ice Cube later expressed sadness that Easel never had the chance to return in one final Friday film, The Survivors and Their Scars. For the Friday cast members who are still with us, life after the film has been a mixture of triumphs and heartbreak. Regina King, who played Craig's sharp and witty sister Dana, went on to become one of the most accomplished names in Hollywood. Already known from the sitcom 227 when she appeared in Friday, she built a career that earned her 4 Emmy Awards and an Academy Award for her performance in If Beale Street Could Talk. She also established herself as a respected director. Yet behind all the accolades, King has carried unimaginable grief. In 2022, her only son, Ian, died at the age of 26. She has spoken openly about her loss, describing it as a love that has no place to go. Nia Long, who played Craig's love interest Debbie, also flourished after Friday. She had already made her mark in Boys in the Hood and The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but her career soared with films like Love Jones, Soul Food, and The Best Man, solidifying her status as a true icon of black cinema. Most recently, she was tapped to portray Katherine Jackson in the upcoming Michael Jackson biopic. One of the most unexpected stories belongs to Angela Means, the actress behind Felicia. While her line "Bye Felicia" became a pop culture phenomenon, it came with a heavy cost. Means had crafted Felicia as a layered character, a kind but troubled woman misunderstood by those around her. Yet as the meme exploded, people began to taunt her in real life. Strangers hurled insults, calling her names from the film, and the very line that made her famous also brought her years of pain. She felt that Felicia, and by extension, herself, was being reduced to a joke. Today, Means has taken control of her own narrative. She runs Jackfruit Cafe, a vegan restaurant focused on nourishment and healing, and has reframed Felicia's legacy as a symbol of resilience rather than ridicule. As for Ice Cube and Chris Tucker, their careers reached extraordinary heights. Tucker became a global sensation with the Rush Hour franchise, while Cube built an empire through his company Cube Vision, producing and starring in box office hits like Barbershop and Ride Along. Each member of the Friday family carved their own path, some touched by tragedy, others by triumph. But for Ice Cube, there remained one unfinished chapter: the fight to bring the story full circle with a final Friday film, a battle that would stretch on for more than 2 decades. A franchise held hostage. For years, fans pleaded for another Friday movie. And for years, Ice Cube had to give them the same answer: it wasn't happening. The project wasn't just delayed, it was locked in a standoff. DJ Pooh would later reveal that the franchise was essentially being held hostage by a movie executive. At the center of it all was a bitter dispute between Ice Cube and Warner Brothers, who owned the rights to the characters and the world he had created. To Cube, the studio didn't understand the spirit of the films or respect the cultural weight they carried. He refused to make another sequel under their terms, insisting on creative control. It became the classic battle of artist versus corporation, with Cube fighting to reclaim what he believed was his. For 2 decades, the fight dragged on, and with each passing year, the dream of a final Friday seemed further out of reach. Then, in 2024, everything shifted. New leadership stepped in at Warner Brothers, and suddenly, there was movement. The new executives recognized the franchise's legacy and the demand from fans. In 2025, after more than 20 years of waiting, the breakthrough finally came. A deal was signed. Ice Cube would write and star in the 4th and final installment, officially titled Last Friday. The news became even bigger when Faison Love confirmed that Chris Tucker was expected to return after decades away. Smokey was finally coming back. For Cube and the fans who never stopped believing, it was a massive victory. But the celebration carried a bittersweet edge. When the cast reunited, there would be empty chairs. John Witherspoon, Tiny Lister Jr., Anthony Johnson, and Bernie Mac, Pops, Debo, Easel, and Pastor Clever were all gone. Their absence would hang over the final chapter. Still, Last Friday promised to be more than just another comedy. It would be both a farewell and a tribute, a story that began on a porch and grew into a cultural landmark. What started as a small film to show the lighter side of South Central had become a generational touchstone. Behind the laughter were real battles for respect, personal tragedies, and a 2-decade war just to finish the story. The legacy of Friday isn't only in its jokes. It lives in the family it built, the legends it lost, and the fight to give fans one last good day. As fans, we've laughed at the jokes, mourned the losses, and waited for the reunion that's finally on its way. But what do you think? Will Last Friday be the perfect ending the cast and fans deserve, or is it coming too late? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the untold stories behind the Friday cast and other Hollywood legends.